television broadcast for 2 or 3 games if there is a third game that is necessary this weekend. Ben, thanks for some time this afternoon. I feel like the last few times we've talked, we have talked about these two teams, Southern Miss and what they're doing under Scott Berry, and Ole Miss. What an intriguing matchup in Hattiesburg this weekend.
Yeah, man. Look, I'm looking forward to it. I've not seen either one of these teams this year. Know a little bit about both of them. Both head coaches, Scott Berry, of course, Mike Bianco, two of my favorite coaches of all time, two guys that do it right. And as a parent, when you send your kid off to school, I think your biggest concern is they get better on the field or the sports that they're playing. But your biggest concern is, can the head coach grow them and make young men out of them, and both of these head coaches do a wonderful job of that, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. So I'm excited to be in the Magnolia State this weekend, man. I'm looking forward to it. I know it's going to be a crazy environment. Both of these teams have been through a lot this year, and Scott Berry, when I think about Southern Miss, I think about pitching, and I look at the national ranks with their pitching staff, and it's phenomenal when you start going through it, and when I think about Ole Miss, I think about offense, and you think about Chatinier and Elko and Justin Bench and the boys, and it's a veteran team that's been around and been together for a while, and it seems to be two teams that are playing really good baseball right now. So what more could you ask for in a super regional environment?
Ben, it's interesting to me that you say that, and I agree with you that when you think about Southern Miss, you start out by thinking about their pitching, and when you think about Ole Miss, you think about their offense, but it could be the flip side of the coin for both teams that determine the outcome. Can Southern Miss's offense get going enough? Can they string together enough hits off a resurgent Ole Miss pitching staff with DeLucia and Elliott to start things off, and those guys at the bullpen that have been pitched so well? And then conversely, can Ole Miss's pitching staff kind of rise to the occasion and hold down Southern Miss? It's almost like, can Southern Miss's hitters get more done, and can Ole Miss's pitchers do more than what the reputation for both sides is?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you start off with Ole Miss, you start thinking about, well, it's a team that, the pitching was pretty good at times this year, but it was kind of spotty, and you didn't know, and you felt like there was a run. But two things jumped out at me looking at the numbers about Ole Miss last weekend. One, you hit the nail on the head. The pitching ramped up a couple of notches. Ole Miss only gave up 11 runs in 3 games. Most teams were giving up 11 runs every game in the regionals, as we saw. I mean, the scoring was crazy, but Ole Miss really turned it up. And look, take a step even before that. Ole Miss actually got knocked out of the SEC tournament to Vanderbilt, but they only gave up 3 runs. So you start looking now, Ole Miss has given up 14 runs total in their last 4 games. So all of a sudden, the pitching staff has really gotten consistent and elevated its game. The other thing that jumped out at me about Ole Miss, now, I got ready to say LSU because LSU had the worst defense in the Southeastern Conference. Ole Miss wasn't much better. They were right above LSU in defense. And I know early in the year they gave away a lot of runs, but you start looking at the regionals, they were clean on defense in Game 1 and in Game 2 of that regional. They made a couple errors in Game 3, but after it was already a blowout score. The score was already 18-4 or whatever it was. They made a couple of errors just from some concentration levels. But I felt like the pitching and the defense for Ole Miss got a bunch better in the regional. Southern Miss, look, the offense to me, looking at the numbers, is a pretty average offense. I mean, they're averaging about 6 runs a game, 6.4, which is pretty average. Having said that, they scored some runs. I mean, they went out and scored some runs and averaged about 6 runs a game in a tough regional, and their pitching's always going to keep them in it, because when I started looking through those numbers with that pitching staff, I started looking at, man, second in the country in ERA. 7th in opponent's batting average, the 4th most shutouts. I love the fact that they throw strikes. That's what really jumps at me. I mean, it's the number 1 strikeout to walk ratio in the entire country. The whip's number 2. Base on balls number 3 best in the country. So it's a pretty potent pitching staff. So yeah, this is a great matchup to see. If some guys can elevate, and you talk about elevating. Ole Miss is running a couple guys out there in DeLucia in Game 1. And not Derek Diamond. I'm trying to think. Hunter Elliott. Yeah, Hunter Elliott that, that weren't even in the weekend rotation when the season began, and that's a great story to working hard and getting some opportunities in some midweek, getting some opportunities in, the bullpen. And all of a sudden you turn around and look, and both these guys are pitching really well right now, and so it's going to be fun to see what happens. But it always boils down to a couple things, clean defense, not giving teams extra opportunities, making some big pitches when you need to. And then, of course, from an offensive standpoint, some big base hits with runners in scoring position just feels like that's going to be the three difference makers in this series.
Throughout most of the season, the rotation for Southern Miss has been Tanner Hall and then Hunter Riggins and then Hurston Waldrop. They're changing things up a little bit, and partly because of rest. They go Hurston Waldrop in game one and then Tanner Hall, who's got 140 strikeouts and just 13 walks, to your point a second ago. What do you see from those two guys at the front end of the rotation for Southern Miss that makes them so special?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, the biggest one is what you mentioned. I mean, Hall, 13 walks, 140 punch-outs. Are you kidding me? In 103 innings of work. Waldrop, not much worse than that. 29 walks, 128 punch-outs, and only 85 innings of work. So I've never seen either one of them pitch off some highlights, but from what I've been told from some of the people that saw them, it's a real good mix, 3 or 4 different pitches. Both of them have a couple different breaking balls. Low 90s fastball. They command it really well, and they'll need to command it really well against Ole Miss because that offense for Ole Miss seems to be swinging and peaking at the right time. So it's going to be fun. I know the ball carries pretty good there when it's warm. You feel like there's going to be a few home runs hit. There were in the regionals. I think you're going to see some more home runs hit in this one. But that's what jumps at me about Southern Miss is three real dudes on the weekend. I mean, 3 real dudes that could go out and pitch. And don't forget about Riggins. I mean, he got him pegged at maybe number 3 in this series. And look, he's probably been the hottest one of all. You go back and look at his last 3 starts. I think he's given up 1 earned run in his last 3 outings. So that's 23 innings of work. He's given up 1 earned run in his last 3 starts. So that's a big number. So it feels like from a pitching standpoint that Southern Miss has a little bit of advantage. And I feel like from an offensive standpoint, Ole Miss has the advantage. Now, who's going to win out? That's the big question.
Visiting with Ben McDonald, previewing the Super Regional in Hattiesburg. He'll be on the call this weekend alongside Dave Neal. Let's talk about pressure for a second. And sometimes we make a bigger deal of that than we have to be, but the stakes are really high. Southern Miss trying to get to the College World Series for the second time ever. Ole Miss trying to get to the College World Series for the second time in Mike Bianco's tenure. They haven't been since 2014. Is there more pressure when you are the home team and you're playing in front of that big crowd? Is it about feeding off of that crowd and not letting pressure get to you? Or is that even a thing?
No, I think it's definitely a thing. I think, look, the numbers have showed us over the years in the NCAA tournament, when you host a regional or you host a super regional, it is a giant advantage. I think it's 71% of the teams that host typically win. So it is an advantage. And when you're hosting at home, I think people expect you to win. Now, the good news for Southern Miss is they just went through a heck of a regional and a hell of a battle against LSU. If there was ever a team that's battle-tested with that environment, being home and the pressure and coming back and having to win 2 and doing what they did, I don't know how much pressure they're going to feel because they just felt a ton of pressure and did pretty well in that. If you look at Ole Miss, it's almost like they're playing with house money. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they were like the 64th team to get in. And I think when Ole Miss left the SEC tournament at 14 and 16, people were kind of sitting around going, maybe 50-50 they get in the NCAA tournament. And you started had that bid stealing going on Sunday. You start thinking, oh, my gosh, Ole Miss might be out. Alabama's probably out. We don't know if they're going to get in. And all of a sudden, Ole Miss gets in as a 3 seed and kind of playing with house money. It's almost like they just kind of grabbed another gear. So I think Ole Miss is going to feel free and easy in this thing, thinking, well, we weren't even supposed to be here to begin with. But you look up, and this is Ole Miss's 3rd consecutive Super Regional. And as you mentioned, they're trying to make that run, and Mike Bianco is trying to get back in his tenure for the second time to Omaha. And it's weird how you can kind of backdoor your way in sometimes, but it doesn't matter what you did during the regular season this time of year. It just matters what you're doing right now. How good is your team playing right now? And it's hard to argue that both these teams aren't playing some really good baseball right now.
Forgive me for asking a non-baseball question. Did you bite off more than you could chew when you decided to reach into the bushes and grab an armadillo?
No, I have done that before, and caught worse things than that. Everybody made a big deal out of that, but I was like, what's the big deal? It's just an armadillo. It's not the first one I've caught. Apparently, I'm going to get leprosy here in the near future is what some people on social media are saying. I hope that doesn't happen, but the good news is I found out some lady with the leprosy clinic here in Baton Rouge said, look, we got one of the best places in the whole world right here, so you're going to be good. 95% of people have immunities to it. You're going to be fine anyway. But if something bad happens, we got you taken care of. So But yeah, I don't know. It was kind of like a hold my beer moment. Somebody said, "I bet you can't," and I said, "I bet I can too because I've done it before." Is what kind of what it boiled down to. And so yeah. So let's hope no armadillos show up over at Hattiesburg.
Last thing, what 30 seconds. What is the one animal that you would not reach out and try to grab with your bare hands?
A badger. Like I won't nothing. I've caught a snake with my bare hands, caught plenty of alligators with my bare hands, some armadillos and some other stuff, but I don't want nothing to do with a badger because I feel like when you reach in on him, you're going to pull out less than what you reached in with. I don't want anything to do with him. So
Southern Miss fans might say you might not want to reach out and grab an eagle. Those dudes are pretty stout also. Ben, thanks so much for your time, man. Look forward to seeing you.
Anytime. Looking forward this week.